Consider subscribing to our channel and liking this video if you found it useful. Friends, and welcome to another edition of Quick and Dirty DIY. I am your host, Spencer, West Coast Pedalboard. We're going to show you today how to wrap Tolex and Tweed on a case. Hopefully you like that. It's going to be useful. We're going to show you, kind of the tricks of the trade. Little secrets, if you will. All right, let's do it. All right, so I'm going to quickly show you what we're going to need for the project. Obviously a case to wrap. We've got two-part case, it's a pedalboard case for us. Next thing is Tolex. This is some Vox style stuff, or high watt black. Respirator for your lungs and stuff, because that's important to, we're going to get into spraying this glue, and this stuff gives off some nasty fumes. A J roller, that's going to help put the material, join it with the case. Sharp blade, super important. We actually love to use super glue, and these little hobby brushes are really nice to have. You'll see why. These are also useful. Putty knife and goggles. And we're going to get going right now. Once you have all your materials and your case that you're going to wrap, what we're going to do is we're going to cut the pieces out. So I like to, the way that we do it is we do a one-piece wrap. So this piece is going to go over the entire thing. All right, so when you get your Tolex, you're going to want to cut the piece out. So what we typically do is lay the case out on this material, whatever it is, Tweed, Tolex, and you're going to just center it in here and make sure all the edges wrap right around this with a little bit of room, right? We're going to try to get around about that much or so, okay? So once we get this, usually the piece is much larger, so you'll make your cut, and this looks really good right here. So you can see that the piece is going to fit on all the sides and all the corners, and not having a bunch of excess so you waste it. All right, we're going to start right now. Oh, hi there. The next step is spraying glue onto this. All right, so once we have our piece cut, we're going to center the case half onto it, right? So it's going to be able to wrap over all the sides. See this? All right. What we're going to do is we're going to lean this thing up just as it sits. And this is probably a good time to say this case should be super clean, no dust on it anywhere. All right, and here we're going to just put the adhesive on one side, just this surface here, and then the surface that it's going to lay down onto, okay? So, this is where you would typically put on your respirator. But I want to be able to talk to you fine people while I'm doing this, so I'm going to sacrifice my lungs today. And also do this outside like we're doing it. That helps out a lot. All right. We also like to do these kinds of projects here when the weather is good. That helps material dry, helps everything. So I'm going for like 80 to 90% coverage, so I'm going to go back and forth here because I want this thing to stick down forever. Once we're done here, we're going to let it tack up just a little bit, and we'll see you again in just a sec. All right, we're tacked up good, dry. What we're going to do is we're going to lay this thing down real nice. I'm going to push it down just a little tiny bit like this. Then I'm going to flip it over, and with the J roller, we're just going to make sure that it's very sweet. So at this point, you can still manipulate it a little bit. So if you have some creases or anything like that, you can actually pull up and move the vinyl around, or the tweed. All right, so make sure you hit all the surfaces. That's how this glue works. Contact adhesive has to have adhesive on both sides, and you have to press it down real good. So, see how we're working this out right here? It's going to look real good. once we are done. Alright. On to the next step. Since we're doing this whole thing in sections, we're going to start with these long sides. That's the next way. You'll see why we're going to do the long sides first in a second, but just know that's what we're going to do. So what we definitely need to remember is all the surfaces, even in these little crevices where the latches are going to end up going, we need to get glue in there because we're going to fold the vinyl in. And the same on the back. The vinyl is going to fold over this lip here, so we're going to have to spray onto the back too. So I'm going to get started here. We're going to also cover this vinyl right here once we're ready. And we're going to let it tack up. We're going to just do one side at a time. I'm going to get the back side of this. And we're going to let it tack up, and we'll see in a sec. Alright, so we're ready to put this piece together here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to drag it over to the side and just gently pull up on this. And we're just going to let the glue do its thing. I'm not really like stretching the vinyl or anything like that. I'm just kind of placing it there. And so with the J-roller from the bottom, I'm just going to roll up like this along the whole surface. And again, if you get a little crease or something, you can pull it apart usually, because this is the contact adhesive, so you have a little bit of time to work. Alright, so once I'm happy with this, I'm going to check it over, make sure everything is good. I'm going to start in the middle here and fold this thing down, and just by hand I'm going to pull it, not really stretching it, just pulling it taut. And I'm going to come all the way down this line right here and make sure that we're square on the edges. So the next step is going to be this blade here. We're going to cut right down in here along this inside frame piece. Okay, we're going to do it there, and then we're going to come down here and do the same thing. We're going to fold this piece down, come along all this way here, and once we get to our little cutouts here, I'm going to find where it cuts out, and I'm going to make a little triangular pattern. If your case doesn't have this, or if you're using a different style of latch, you can just bypass this step, and we'll see in a second. But for those of you that are trying to do something similar to how we do it, this is going to be pretty important to watch. So once we make this cut right here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open this vinyl back up and actually push it down from the inside. You'll be able to see right here. So I want this piece to actually mash down. Alright, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold this real tight here so the two pieces of vinyl actually join themselves. And so once we get done with this, you'll kind of see why, but we're going to trim this off from all four corners, and by squeezing that vinyl together like that, it's going to make a real nice edge right there. You'll see what I'm saying right here again too with this side. Okay. So we're going to just jam forward and do this other side, and we'll see you in a second. So I've made my cuts over here on this side. Next is we're going to trim off the excess vinyl. So I do like to leave some extra in here just so it has some glue so it stays down. You don't want to cut it too close to the top here because of this corner right here. Just by, physics and stuff I don't understand completely, it's going to try to pop itself back up. So I like to leave a little bit of room on the vinyl like this. That's going to hold that down really nice. So I'm going to come over here, do the same thing. Please be careful if you're using a blade like this. They're super sharp. You don't want to have a bad day by cutting your hand off. So there we go. Last step is the corners. All right, this is the very beginning of this process. So what we're going to do is we're going to pinch this together. If you saw our last video, this is very similar to that. I'm going to take my blade and right down the center, I'm going to make a nice little mark. So it should be 45-degree cut. And I'm going to come over here and do the same thing. There we go. Now on to the next side. Now that we have both sides wrapped, we're going to move on to the third side. And this is where, you know, it gets not complicated, but you just got to take your time here. And there's going to be multiple cuts, so we're going to try to get in kind of close so you can see what we're doing. All right, so what I'm going to do again is I'm going to flip this thing over to us. And come on in down in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm putting the blade right at the corner here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut in, and I'm going to actually come up a little bit like this. Alright, so you'll see. And what the purpose of that is we're going to wrap this little piece around right here a little bit. And then we're going to cut it. We're going to trim this off right here. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to get this piece at the very bottom to angle up a little bit. So once we start wrapping this piece on top of it, it's going to be out of the way and it's not going to create any issues. So after we get this little cut, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just use this little carpenter square. What I'm going to do is I'm going to line the edge up over here with this front part of the case. And with the blade, I'm going to cut straight up this vinyl here and get this big piece off. Alright, so this is definitely something you want to take your time doing. The motion is a little awkward if you've never done it before, so just take your time on that. And once we make it around, I'm going to go ahead and trim off this excess piece on the top too. So this is important to go straight down. And I'm going to flare it out this way a tiny bit because this is what's actually going to make our corner right here. Okay, so I want this to be a little bit big so I can trim it and make it look sweet. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to do this to the other side, and then we're going to start putting a little bit of super glue down. So we're just going to speed through this other side and get back to the corners in a second. So at this point, what you should have is you should have two pieces here, not yet glued down, all right, but cut nice and straight. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to fold both these pieces back, and we're going to just put some of the glue right here on this edge. Make sure we get on the top, and then also on this piece of vinyl here. We're going to come over here, do the same thing. Alright, and we're going to let that tack up and we'll show you the next process. So the glue is dried, so what we're going to do is just going to, by hand, fasten this down here. Alright, same over here. Now with our knife, we're going to make our cut right here, and this is going to be our corner. So it's alright if you got a little bit of stuff showing right there. Use the blunt edge of your knife and you're just going to work this thing over and let the contact adhesive do its job, and that's going to stick down really good. Alright, so I can even pull it up a little bit and look to make sure I'm making the cut the right way. And we're going to just mash that down. And if you have any excess material here, I'm going to just trim that off because we're going to want this vinyl here in a moment. It's going to wrap over the edge of this. So I'm just going to go ahead and make sure that this is trimmed nice and flush. And our next step is going to be using the same carpenter square. So on this side, what we're going to do is we're going to line this up with the inside of this frame. So you can see this channel right here. And now what we're going to do is we're going to lay this down and we're going to make this cut right here. And this piece will end up fitting right in there real nice. So what I usually do is I come down here right at the corner and I'm going to cut a nice little arc into this and then go straight back. Same thing over here. And our next step is going to be applying some glue and some super glue. And we'll show you why in just a sec. So we've got this piece put on, we've got our corners made, everything's looking sweet. We made our cuts here, just verify that that folds over without any obstruction, and it does. So the next step is to basically glue this. We're going to glue this, make sure the backside is glue. And then also, this is kind of like a pro tip here actually, we're going to apply super glue along this edge right here. So once we actually mash this together, we're going to put some pressure right on this edge right here, because glue, normal glue doesn't really like vinyl too much. So this stuff right here is going to make sure that once this gets joined together, it should never come off. So here we go. We're going to put the spray adhesive on first. All right, you can use like a scrap piece over here, because what's actually going to end up happening is this piece is going to just cover part of this corner, so you don't need to spray this whole side. So what you can do is you can use the scrap piece, something like this, and use it as like a little guide. All right, you can line it up with the top there. Other good thing about the spray adhesive is if you get a little extra on where it shouldn't, you can always get it off real easy with your thumb. All right. So we want to have good coverage on this. We don't want this. We don't want the vinyl to come off ever. So we're going to put a good amount on here. I'm going to get some on the back. Make sure that that happens. Not very good with my left hand, but this is how we do it. Okay. Now, when we do this super glue, we're using this Gorilla Glue. I'm not sure if you can get this stuff, but this stuff works pretty good. We've got these little hobby brushes too. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go all the way down into this corner here. I'm just going to put a little line all the way down, and I'm going to use, just to measure, I'm going to bring this up because I only want to put this on the part that's going to be touching the vinyl. So once I have my little bead down there, I'm going to use this little hobby brush. I'm going to brush it right to the edge. So we want it right onto the edge so that that doesn't start peeling off. That'll look bad. So I'm going to do this side over here. Okay. And depending on the CA glue or super glue that you use, there's different kind of requirements on how you're supposed to apply it and what you do after you join the surfaces together. This stuff here happens to be let it tack up pretty good, almost to the point it's dry. And once you join the surfaces together, you have to actually press it together with your hand for a little bit of time. So we're going to wait for this to dry up just a little tiny bit more and put these two pieces together. All right, we're ready to join them together. So again, very similar to how we do the other sides, is I'm just going to gently pull on this, and with our J roller from the very bottom, I'm just going to come straight up. Into the side and the top. So with the cut that we made previous to this, you can see it's just going to fold right down in there real nice. And the same over here. So I'm going to just do all this by hand usually. You can also use your little putty knife. I'm going to trim this excess kind of off here. Alright, just be very careful, you don't want to cut your hands. Alright, I want to get that excess off of there. And now the super glue, we actually need to hold it down, so I'm going to flip this case up and just put some pressure on it with my hands for 15 or 20 seconds. That way it's real solid where we applied that on these corners. We don't want this to come up ever, so this is how we do it. Meh. thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed. And that is how we wrap a case in Tolex or Tweed or any other type of vinyl material. If you have any questions or comments, please leave it below, and thanks again.